My name's Jane Hunt. I work with the GrowNextGen program. I want to welcome you on behalf of GrowNextGen, on behalf of Ohio soybean farmers, and thank you all again for being here. I think the finish line is in sight, so we're going to hopefully give you a lot of things to think about for as we get started today on this webinar about connecting AI and ag in the science classroom. I want to turn it over to one of our teacher leaders. This is Chuck Crawford is going to be our main presenter today. He teaches at Dublin Jerome High School, and he can tell you all about what he teaches and how he's using AI in the classroom. So again, Chuck, thanks for being here and thanks for doing this for us.
Thank you, Jane. I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity. As you saw, I was flickering around with my presentation slides. It's been a while since I've done one of these. Back in COVID days, we were all pretty good at it. So I'm a little bit rusty. So if you see me look off my screen, I actually have another monitor to the side there. So I'm trying to manage a couple of different things. But to begin with, as we do this, as I look at the other screen, right? So as I finish some conversations or introductions here, I'm going to actually post something into the chat, and we'll use that at different times as we go through this. The question is, what are your apprehensions about artificial intelligence? And so what I want you to think about here as we go into this session is, what are the things that concern you as you work through this in your classroom? I think there's a lot of concern around AI and what goes on there. And I've been using AI for several years in my classroom and trying to figure out the best things that I can do to manage it. I've been fortunate enough to know Jane for a long time, being able to do different things with GrowNextGen. I took a couple of years off because of situations with my son and his sports. But I went back, and some of you may have seen me talk about AI at SECO this past spring. So we're going to go along in the same vein of that. But I've learned quite a bit even from that standpoint there. If at any point you have a question, please feel free to ask it in the chat. And if I catch it, I'll catch it, or Jane will make sure that I get the attention there to begin with. All right, so the very beginning of this is actually just making sure that we're on the same page of what artificial intelligence is. And the question is what do we really know as artificial intelligence? And people think that this is a new term, and it's actually really not a new term. The first conference that people don't realize on artificial intelligence, where the name was coined, was actually in 1956. So when people realize that we've been talking about artificial intelligence since 1956, they realize, oh, wait, maybe we just didn't know enough to be able to do it. And the big piece about it is actually processing power. With our chips, we're able to process things much faster. And by doing that, we can actually use the artificial intelligence. So it's caught up with what's necessary for it. Artificial intelligence actually comes in three different types of stances that we would have. When you're looking at it, it's the idea, and see if you can guess these as I go through them. So we'll start off with artificial narrow intelligence. This is limited range of possibilities. This is what's interesting. People think that, well, people are concerned about where we are in our stages of artificial intelligence. And in reality, we're right here. This is what we can do. We have chatbots that can do limited tasks, but they're trained to do just one thing and one thing only, and that's the extent of it. So we are technically in the idea of artificial narrow intelligence. When we go on to the idea of general intelligence, we're looking at the idea of, can a computer understand, learn, and adapt to new information as the same way as humans? And people, it depends on who you listen to, but this is a topic that is gaining a lot of more concern about, are we actually at that point yet? Yet to be seen. And then obviously the last part is the idea of superintelligence. And that's the idea that a computer can do it better than humans. So, and what we mean by that is the idea of cognition. What do we have with cognition? How fast is it going? What can they do? How can they outperform humans? When you talk about artificial intelligence, the big concern is how do you test the intelligence? So the question is, what are the tests that we would use to say, okay, well, they're better than humans? And a lot of people are having discussions about what those tasks are, but there's not really a lot of agreements on what those tasks should be for us to be able to talk about it. All right. So having said that, like I said, artificial intelligence, what we have are chatbots. They use natural language processing, and it's important for us to understand how these work. So ChatGPT is one of those examples that a lot of you have probably used, but hopefully today, by the end of the session, you're going to see some that are much better at doing things than what ChatGPT is, or at least in my opinion. Um, when we look at this, we need to, there's other terms that come up, and it's talking about artificial intelligence is like the big blanket thing of what's going on. But what you have is machine learning. And the idea of machine learning is the fact that it can learn from itself or it can learn from a set of information. So machine learning is how the computer is actually programming itself to be able to do it without us actually typing in X's and or zeros and ones for them to be able to read. So we upload different pieces of equipment or different information, and then that information is actually used. This is possible because of neural networks, and neural networks are just a method within machine learning that allows it to do it faster. And then you get into the idea of deep learning. Those are neural networks that are layered on top of each other. So this is why the processing is so important to us. We are used to the idea of CPUs. Those are central processing units. What happens is that we're using GPUs now, and GPUs take so much more energy to be able to do, but they process things so much faster, and that's what's necessary. So you have to remember when you go to a chatbot, the chatbot is making up its answer as you ask it. And so that's why there's a hesitation in it because it's thinking and then it's producing. All right. So it has this set of knowledge, and that set of knowledge then turns around and ends up beginning or being able to give you the information that you want. So these chatbots are basically part of different LLM families. So GBT is part of OpenAI, and you can see on the screen, these are different parts. Claude is one of those that I am actually very fond of. Anthropic was actually designed to make sure that AI doesn't go evil to the world. But there's a couple different pieces here. But the key is that each one of these LLM families are designed to do different pieces of work. And that's what people don't understand. We think ChatGPT because, oh yeah, that's what we have access to. Well, it's OpenAI, and there's a lot of things that are OpenAI that do it better. Perplexity is probably one of those that does it better. So you guys ready for the secret of how to use AI in the classroom? We want to create a journey, all right? And this is how I want to illustrate how things are going or can be done. I want you to think of this idea of exploring the infrastructure that is needed to get a soybean from the farmer to the consumer. All right. So I want you to think about this process. Now, when I use this in my high school environmental science class, I'm actually introducing infrastructure issues within the course. But students in my suburban school district don't know a lot about agriculture. So the fact of the matter is that they need help in understanding what they're looking for. So what we want them to do is use the AI to assist them in the understanding of the infrastructure issues that happen. All right. So what do we mean by that? For us here in Ohio, we are fortunate because we have a great agricultural industry. These screens, each farmer in America produces enough food to feed 165 people. 13.7 million acres of Ohio's 28.7 million total acres are farmland. People don't realize that, how much farmland, and sometimes people just need to jump in a car and drive, and you'll see what's going on. There are 75,800 farms in the state with the average size of 181 acres. All right. So that's to show how big the complex is here in Ohio and the importance of it. And what people really don't understand is that 1 in 10 Ohioans have an agricultural related job. And the big thing for your students to know is that these come in sales, they come in programming, they come in engineering, they come in all aspects of any workforce that you could think. The problem is that the ag industry does not have enough workers to fill these spots. So these pieces need to be sorted out, and students need to know that there are opportunities within the ag industry here in the state of Ohio to be able to actually make a very, very good living for yourself and your family. If you think about our role as educators, we need to be very explicit about what our expectations are in our classroom. And so when I have this diagram, and yes, I had Claude help me make this, what we're looking at is different components of the class. So in the environment, is it an AI-free activity? Obviously, a test would be an AI-free activity, or is it an AI-assisted one? When I'm doing the creative process, I allow the AI assistants to be in there. So that would include research or project-related pieces that are going on. We always talk about the idea of credit, being able to give credit, or making sure that we say where we came from on the pieces. And then we talk about the stages of the assignment. Sometimes I don't want my students using AI to brainstorm, but I want them to create a brainstorming and then share the brainstorming with me, and let's see what this is. And then you can go from there and use AI to do the rest of it. But then sometimes I do want them to use it. So being able to tell them where they're allowed using the AI is actually of critical importance to us. When you look at the idea of task, is it about assignment completion, which should never be the case? We don't want the assignment completion. We want it to be a research assistant or a learning enhancement. There's AI now that's available to record you and take notes and then make flashcards for you and be able to do all these kinds of things that help you do learning enhancement. And I think that's a powerful tool for students to be able to use. When we do usage, it's the idea, can you just copy and paste what was in our wrapper? And that's what I would call wholesale adoption, and that's not what we want. Can it be student-led prompting? That's what we want. We want the student to lead the prompting and be able to ask questions, interact with the AI, and then be able to use it and say collaboratively, okay, how can I refine this to something a little bit better? Because the final product is a combination of the both. And again, the idea is making sure that students end up working with it in the appropriate times. So what does it look like when I actually give an assignment? It would look more like this. So as a student, you can clearly see what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. And what that helps out with is that if you're putting parameters on them, they tend to understand that. And more importantly, if they go outside those parameters, then you have a place to stand to say, yes, this is academic misconduct, or however your building is actually dealing with those issues. Let me address this incorrect information here in a second, but does this help, this diagram help you understand how you can end up using um, um, being articulate about what you want with the expectations being explicit rather than implicit on those pieces? The idea of digital citizenship is interesting. I will ask you, and to deal with the question that's on here, how do we know if it's right or not? Can anybody tell me, let's see, I guess I don't know where I am. Showing a book on the screen. It's called Ignorance, How It Drives Science by Stuart Firestone. Why don't you turn around and put it into an AI machine that you have and say, why did Galileo get excommunicated? So we have one person coming out with the heliocentric theory. Most people have the idea that if you, Galileo, there was a geocentric versus heliocentric view of the world, if we all remember this. And basically, the story that I was always told was Galileo was excommunicated because he was going against the church. Is that what everybody understands? If you put it in AI, that is exactly what it'll tell you. It'll tell you basically that he turned around and he was excommunicated because he went against church teachings. That is based off of common knowledge. So you have to think about your AI and where it's going through. So if everybody believes that this is the truth, does it mean it's the truth? So if you go through Wikipedia, if you go through any online resources, if you go through most textbooks, if you go through all of these things, they've oversimplified what happened to Galileo. And it was first pointed out to me in this book. And then you go back to it. And really, the crux of it is it was a political move, is what it came down to. And Galileo, although he was teaching against the church, he was actually doing what he was asked to do. And then there were other people who got involved, and basically they said, "We don't like you now." And then they brought him up on heresy. And the problem is that you can't be not guilty in heresy, because you would turn around and say that the church was wrong, and the church couldn't be wrong. So instead of Galileo being told that he was right, they had to put him on house arrest, and that's kind of the story. So it's not as much the fact that he was against it; it was the fact that the church couldn't be wrong. So there's more story to that behind. So the question is how do we know what it is? How do we verify? That's the hard part. If you've seen posts here recently, you have what's happened to students is they turn around and they ended up used to do a Google search, right? And then the Google search turns around and says, okay, here's 100,000 pages with this information on it. And then students had to start crafting through that and look through what they wanted based off of what the algorithm gave to them. The problem now is that you have students who put it in and it gives you an AI generated information and they think that's the absolute truth. So the critical eye still has to be there, and we still have to teach students that they have to look into these pieces and understand what it's doing. Because I can tell you from firsthand account, there's things that I've asked AI to do, and you look at it, and it's like it's just not right. It's not what I know to be the truth. So is there any way to get around that? The answer is no. We just have to be careful with trying to figure out those pieces.
Well, and isn't it true, Chuck, that there will be different answers potentially from different AI, just because aren't they learning from things that are being entered into them as well? Are they continuously changing, or is that a myth also?
It's continuously changing for certain ones. So if you think about the models, ChatGPT has its own set of models and it updates every once in a while. And that's where you get ChatGPT 3.0, 3.5, or where you get Claude 3.0, 3.5, where they're doing their updates. Other ones like Gemini actually is turned loose on the internet.
Okay.
So you have to be, and it does read through all of it. So it's not deciphering whether it's right or wrong. It's just taking it as information. Um, so yeah, it depends on which one. And I will be the first one to tell you I'm not an expert at knowing exactly how often each one of those updates. But for instance, Ohio State basketball did really well. What was it, last year or the year before? But if you looked it up, like ChatGPT couldn't answer the question because they didn't have the current information.
Mm.
So there is a window. ChatGPT is one of those that it's cut off. They just recently did an update, so most of it's current. But if you're trying to find the answer to an event that happened in the last week, you're probably not going to find it very well in a ChatGPT, unless you upload the article that you have read about it, and that's always an option to do.
I'm curious, Bridget, about the environmental impact of AI. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, so in order to run these huge, like, I'm not going to use the right terminology, but where they keep all this information, centers, they use a lot of water to cool the system. It's also a lot of energy going into it. And as I'd have to look up the exact data, but it is like, just to answer one question, it's like a whole day's worth of like water and energy for someone or something like that. Like it's it's a lot. I could try to ask AI
Yeah.
what it is, but yeah. And so I teach my kids about sustainability and stuff. And so I have used AI some, but I also don't like the idea of, I feel like the environmental impact needs to be discussed as well.
Can I ask, I teach environmental science, right? And these types of questions that come up all the time. Do you happen to have air conditioning in your house?
Yes.
Well, when I grew up, we didn't have air conditioning in our house. And now I'm pretty sure that you can't buy a house without air conditioning. So there are and that's not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that we're spending a huge amount of electricity on things that we didn't 25, 30 years ago. And so I don't know what the answer is because I've seen the reports on saying how much water and how much electricity it is. I haven't done a deep dive into the topic to know specifically. I am concerned about it, but we're also doing a lot more air travel now as a society. We're doing all kinds of other things that are increased. So doing these data warehouses is kind of in flow with the rest of what we're doing, I guess is the best way to put it, right?
Yeah, but that doesn't make it better. And I can't control my air conditioner, so it's not. I mean, I realize it's the next thing, but I do talk to my students like, don't just use it for anything. Like think about the environmental, every time you ask a question, there's environmental impact with that. So I talk to them about air flight too. Like when you take a plane, you don't have a lot of control over it because it's your family's, but there's environmental. So we talk about all of that. And I just, if nobody pushes back and nobody says they need to like use alternative sources of energy or figure out how to do it better, then we're just going to keep doing it worse.
Yeah, I agree. Right. I mean, it's something that actually has to be talked about. It's all about trade-offs and what people are willing to do and what they're not. So it's an important piece. They're putting data warehouses here all over the place, and it's like, where is all this stuff going? And it's a concern for sure.
Yeah, I guess I would add to that is who needs training? Is it the students that need the training, or is it the teachers that need training on how to make it more usable, or as Chuck said, set the boundaries for how to use it?
I think conversations about having
Sorry, I couldn't figure out how to unmute.
It's okay. On my phone, it's bad. I understand.
Hi, Jane. I love seeing you on these things. Anyway, so yeah, so like obviously they're using them to like write their English papers. Yeah, no, that's a negative. Don't do it. But like, I guess I'm more of if they're using it as a tool to like help them find sources or help them find how to like I'm just using the English paper because we're getting ready to do cloning and there's write an argument essay on it. And if they're like, hey, can you help me like outline, these are the ideas I want to argue, can you help me kind of outline what I need to do? Like I feel like my kids specifically at school are just getting punished for using AI, and then they just keep pushing us to use AI. And I'm like, this doesn't compute. I don't like, if we're using it, then we should also be teaching them the appropriate way to use it. Like I'm them coming up with ideas and things on their own, like especially in a science classroom as much as they can. But I had some that were struggling really hard to come up with like a comparative question. They're doing their end of year labs. And I was like, it has to be comparative, it has to have quantitative data, all this stuff. And I was like, why don't you chat GPT an idea that's easy? And they're like, we can do that. And I was like, yeah, do it. And then if it's something that you can do, and they did, and they came up with like a Coke, Diet Coke and regular Coke experiment. And they still had to collect the data. They still had to do all the stuff. And they were like, this actually, we didn't think it was going to be this hard for people to guess which one was which, but it was. And I was like, look, you discovered something and you used ChatGPT and it was fine. So
Samantha, I think you bring up such a great point. Our data science teacher was working on some things and we were having a conversation and she was asking me the same idea. And I said, you should actually use the AI to help create different opportunities for the students to do. And then the students have to evaluate what they're going to do because not everything that the chat is going to give you is even feasible. So are we more worried about kids barfing out information that it doesn't mean anything, or do we want them to analyze things and make the best decision based off of what they're seeing? And I want my kids to be analytic. I want them to be able to evaluate and pick the best option. So my hat's off to you for doing it that way. I think it's a great use of AI because it picks up things that you would never even think of. Appreciate you sharing, Samantha. I think it's a good point on those pieces. I think there's a lot of fear because people don't know what it is. And I know that when I sit down with colleagues who are hesitant and we sit down and just start working through it, they start understanding. Like I had a math teacher who had some hesitation and I turned around and I said, okay, take a PDF of a document that you have. Okay. Now put it into the AI, upload it, and ask it to give you an answer sheet. It turns around and it gives an answer sheet, right? Okay. Now ask it to turn around and give you extension questions that can go with that. It turned around and did it for her. And then I said, okay, now ask for an alternative, a worksheet that was there. It turned around and created an alternative worksheet that was there. So there's so many different things that it can do that help us in the craft of education that I think it's really good for us to be able to use. And then the more we get comfortable with it, the more we have students comfortable with it and being able to ask them that question. But again, I think it goes back to the idea of making sure that we articulate clearly what the expectations of the usage is within the classroom. And if we do that, I think we're going to end up seeing things more enriched than what we ever imagined because they're going to be able to get to things at a higher level than they were expecting because they can just know it faster. I go back to the idea of the soybeans and the time it took me to learn about soybeans was quite a bit, but when I have an AI and it's telling me the information completely and totally, I'm like, oh, look at all this stuff. I don't have to go to Zenho Grain down in
New Orleans.
New Orleans to be able to tell me all this stuff because it's identifying it for me in different components that are going on there.
Is anyone else using AI in their classroom currently?
Ken, I like your idea of the piece that can't be AI'd. And a lot of times, it depends on what aspect that you are in your process. Again, that's why the brainstorming piece, I think having them to put something, I have literacy journals that we keep in my class. So these lit journals, they oftentimes have to do their brainstorming in that without any computers on, without anything. Just kind of get down your ideas, write down what you're thinking, and then have a conversation. And then, okay, now this is what you might want to consider as you put into the AI, how you can get a better answer from it. So I think that's a really, really good piece. And just so everybody knows, like I'm not a person who believes AI should be part of everything. In fact, my class I feel is ungoogleable because of the things that I do in it, because of the way I ask questions. But I just think that AI allows kids to be more analytic than they've ever been able to be in a more practical way. Like they can get information, start making decisions, and it can be on topics that I'm really not familiar with. And that's where the power comes from. I like the debate piece because you can actually do for and against, and then the students would have to prepare. And then on the day of, you can end up saying, oh, you have to do this. So that's a good use of it because when you end up asking the AI to give you a for and against, then if you put a time restriction on how much they're allowed speaking, what you have is that they have to start narrow down the information that they have. So the AI spits it out to you, and then you turn around and say, okay, well, I can use this because it's the most powerful, but I have to get rid of this because I don't have enough time. So time is a beneficial factor in all of this is because if you say, okay, one assignment I did recently, they used AI to generate some information, but I said you can only be between 750 and 1,000 words. Well, the information the AI gave out put them at 2,500 words probably. So they have to refine that information. So using length of the document or length of the argument is always powerful to make them have to make decisions on what the best arguments are.
Well, we have about 5 more minutes. I don't want to cut anyone off if anybody has other questions or comments, but I do want to close with a few comments about what your next call to action might be. But if there is anyone else that has other thoughts or questions or concerns, please go ahead and ask.
Data sets are a very, very powerful piece. And by doing the data sets, you can actually say, give me 10 different alternative data sets, and then the different groups would have different sets. So you could end up doing it that way. The versions is so easy to do when you actually use AI, because you can get, I don't like everybody working on the same thing. I like them working on the same process. So if they're working on the same process and have different data sets, that's a very, very powerful piece to do. So what I used to do is I used to use dice all the time to be able to have randomness in the samples, but now you can get a data set just from asking an AI to do it.
I'll go ahead and close this out. I just want to put this last thing in the chat. My favorite quote from the presentation, Chuck, was, "The person who is making the prompt is the one who has the power when using AI." I think that is amazing. That is exactly what we want our students to understand. And the idea that you have to refine the prompt, that it's not the first prompt probably that's going to get you what you want, but you look at it, you refine it, you tell a story. I love that, creating the journey. So thank you so much for presenting. I do want to just mention that at this moment, this activity is not anywhere found on GrowNextGen, but we do have a lot of other resources up there. Chuck and I are going to work together to get this how to use AI presentation up. You all will receive slides in the post-event communication, so you will get the slideshow that he presented today. But also on GrowNextGen, you can find e-learning courses, career videos, talking about a lot of those careers that he mentioned there at the very beginning. In Ohio, lots of ag-related careers. We also have industry experts that you can reach out to through us. So if there's somebody you see on our website that is an industry leader, they will Zoom into your classroom. We've had a guy who does a lot of bioinformatics activities Zoom into teachers' classrooms and talk to them, because he's an actual diagnostician at an ag-related lab in Fargo, North Dakota. We also have student research projects. We just have done a couple of really successful virtual field trips. You might have seen one to Anthony Thomas, which is a chocolate factory here in Columbus. And just the other day, we had a virtual planting field trip, but unfortunately, our farmers weren't able to get in the field. So if you'll click one more, Chuck. The best thing you can do is come to one of our workshops. We usually have these two two-day workshops. However, I will tell you that food science is 40 out of 40 right now. So I don't know what we're going to do with 40 people yet, but that one definitely is on a wait list only. And yeah, sorry, Ken, couldn't get everybody's Buckeyes. But Ag Biotech Graduate Academy still has several spots available. It's June 23rd and 4th. It's in Delaware at the Delaware Area Career Center. These are for Ohio teachers. So if you know Ohio teachers and you want to, oh, look at that, Samantha. Thank you. If you want to pass the word that Ag Biotech has some spaces available, we would love to see you. Arizona teacher some year, we open them up through a different program that we have, and that's called nourishthefuture.org. So go to that website, and also I'll give you, this is my email. We are doing work in 8 different states this year. So I don't think any of them are quite as far west as you, because of course we're sponsored by commodity groups like corn and soybean. So yeah, I don't know that there are that many commodity groups out there, but we'd be excited to host you someplace. So keep in touch. So at any rate, again, I just want to say thank you so much.